So what's up there, Bulldogs, with another video, and this morning we will be doing a reaction to the brand new SML. Okay, I'm sorry. This one will be to the newest film theory video. This one will be You Cannot Escape Iron Lung. So, let's see and find out what this will be about. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what you want us to act next. Consider hitting the bell icon so get notified whenever we upload personal love on their Bulldogs. Also, go look at our videos. Come back to this video, like and comment on all the videos, including this video, and also let it be known in the comments down below. And that's no cap as well. Without further ado, 3, 2, 1, let's see and find out what this will be about. Let go.
The world of Iron Lung would be hell on Earth.
Okay.
Imagine being trapped in a submarine, welded into a metal tube with little hope of escape.
Well, yeah, that's true, okay.
Into the bottom of an alien ocean, and you're not alone down there. But, worst of all, even if you do survive, there's nothing to go home to. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory.
That's so.
The show that's trapped in a submarine exploring the wasteland that is the YouTube video feed these days. Why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button to help us out on that mission, huh? So, we are about to be given a huge gift to loyal theorists. This month, at the end of January, YouTube game legend Markiplier is releasing his very own feature film that he wrote, directed, and starred in. Iron Lung. Now, that already is just awesome.
Okay.
And seriously, congratulations to Mark for this incredible achievement. To see how his hard work has paid off and resulted in this independent project getting released at such a wide scale brings a tear to my eye when I know that creatives like Mark have worked hard to show Hollywood that they have to take us seriously. Something that also wouldn't be possible without your support, so please go check out Iron Lung when it hits theaters. Like, Mark didn't sponsor this video or anything like that. I just really believe in this project and I want it to succeed. Anyway, while Iron Lung is Mark's feature debut, it isn't the first time this story has been told. See, this is actually based on an independent horror game of the same name released back in 2022, enjoyed by many a YouTuber and streamer. If you need a quick refresher, in the Iron Lung universe, decades ago, the universe was hit with the Quiet Rapture. Every planet and star in the sky vanished, and all that was left were the people living out on space stations. Everyone else disappeared with the planets and the stars. But at the same time, anomalies called blood oceans appeared out in space. Moons that were otherwise empty were now covered in blood. Oceans of it. Thus the blood oceans. Naturally, and with little hope elsewhere, the survivors want to investigate these blood oceans. And you, dear viewer, are chosen to dive deep beneath their surface in a rusty old ship called the Iron Lung. Already, that setup is sick and makes for some good sci-fi. But it gets even better, or worse, when you realize that the sub you're in isn't made for this kind of exploration. Oxygen depletes quickly, and it starts to fall apart. And while you're photographing the bottom of this ocean, well, you realize that you're not alone down here. There's a creature in these depths with you, and it attacks your ship as the game ends. Pretty awesome, right? And something perfect to make a theory about. Which is why I was actually pretty shocked to realize that we never did one over at our sister location, Game Theory. So with the movie releasing this month, I thought that, hey, if Tom isn't gonna do it, I will. This has all of the hallmarks of an incredible independent or analog horror story. And digging into this one, well, I was not disappointed. Yeah, based on what little information we get about this universe, the lore in the games, the snippets of info we get from the movie trailers, the real-world science behind a lot of its ideas, and even the name of the game itself, I can only come to one conclusion. Iron Lung is purgatory.
Two sober introverts walk onto a Virgin Voyages cruise.
between heaven and hell, the living and the dead, and there's no escape. Weld yourself into this submarine, loyal theorists, as we dive into what's really going on in Iron Lung. So, to really understand what's going on here in this movie adaptation, I think we should take a look at the video game it's adapting. When you first start the mission in the game, there isn't a lot to do or even look at. You're locked in a small metal tube, and the only source of information you have is a console at the back of the ship. Here you can search its database, and using that, we learn why we're in this tube to begin with. See, after the Quiet Rapture, a group of survivors formed to collect the remaining materials left on the asteroids and blood moons that remained in the universe. This group was named the Consolidation of Iron, or COI. But they weren't the only group of survivors. Other colonies had other ideas, including the largest space station created by humans, known as Eden, which waged war with the COI. During the following war, some of Eden's membership were captured and imprisoned, and many were forced into the Conviction Realization Program. Basically, this was a fancy-dancy name for prison slave labor, and that is why the player is down here. They were a member of Eden, imprisoned and forced to become part of the COI. Though I have to say, being locked in a submarine like my guy here in Iron Lung would probably give you some time to think, especially about your money. But you can think a bit easier with your cash thanks to the sponsor for today's theory, Chime. Especially because they're offering up to a $350 bonus intro offer, but we'll get to that. If you don't know, Chime is the #1 most loved banking app, and millions of Americans use it to manage and save their money. And as we enter the new year with everything getting more expensive, or if you just made a New Year's resolution to make every dollar go as far as it can, well, you'll know that you want to save as much as possible. Chime offers a high-yield savings account, which earns up to 3.50% APY. That's 8 times higher than the national average, and means that if you put in like $6,000 into one of those accounts, you'd be earning around $210 in a year, instead of just the $24 you get with the national average APY. That's more than enough to treat yourself to a fun night out at the movies a few times a year. The average American would also save nearly $300 in banking fees with Chime too, since they have no monthly fees, overdraft fees, or minimum balance fees. As someone who just kind of accepted that those sorts of fees were the norm, not having to pay that is incredible, dude. Plus, Chime just makes it so easy to save. If you set up Chime as your direct deposit for your paycheck, you can automatically pull out a bit of that money and
Hi. Hope you're doing good.
it'll go straight into your savings. That means that you can start building up those New Year resolution savings without even thinking about it. Not to mention that you can also get your paycheck up to 2 days early with Chime. Best of all, Chime is offering a bonus of up to $350 with a new Chime account by going to chime.com/filmtheory, or by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. That's just more cash on top of all the other money you're going to be saving with their high-yield savings accounts, and you can get your paycheck up to 2 days early. Thank you again to Chime for sponsoring this video, but let's get back to the terrifying truth behind Iron Lung. And though the COI claims this is a humane way to treat their prisoners, this is basically a death sentence. See, this sub isn't designed to go as deep as we do in the game. They outright admit it towards the beginning of the story, and there's a note left on the floor of the sub that gives us even more details about what we've gotten ourselves into. Quote, "This is not an expedition. It's an execution. When they put you in here, they don't want you to return. If there is still hope, it lies beyond the veil. I will choose to breathe my last breath here at the bottom of the ocean, unseen, unheard, uncontrolled. They will get their execution. I will get my freedom." Whoever wrote this note is fully aware of the COI's intentions, and they are not good. If I were a betting man, this is a note left by the last person on this submarine, most likely another prisoner from Eden. That also checks out with the tone of the entries you can find on the database. For example, they say, quote, "If they send you down in the Iron Lung, they don't give up if you come back, or if this sub comes back." It's very similar in tone and writing style to the note on the floor. So the person writing both the note and the entries are almost certainly the same person. Though that does come with a little bit of a head scratcher, like did the COI just not clean up the sub after him and just straight up throw in the next prisoner without even checking to see if the last guy did anything to the sub? Or left anything behind? I mean, hey, I guess it does kind of make sense with the brutal efficiency they seem to be going for. This is most likely because, before, they did care about the submarines, but lost a lot of resources by designing them for long-term use. This is proven by one of the log entries you can read about a different sub called the SM-8. Here, we discovered that the SM-8 was a submarine designed for multiple missions, but that it was torn apart by the monsters within the Blood Ocean. The previous convict eventually discovered this, and then informed COI about its fate, but no one was surprised or even cared. Brutal, man. But did you catch that? He's told people about the sub being torn apart. He told people about it. That means that he communicated with COI about what happened in the Blood Ocean, which is a pretty big deal. Why? Well, while you might think that any sort of debrief might have just happened over an intercom or something, the communication systems don't work at the bottom of the Blood Oceans.
We're starting to lose radio signal.
That also lines up with the fact that all of the information you're pulling from on the submarine is from a, quote, local database, meaning that there's no network connecting the data collected on the Iron Lung to its headquarters. The only way for that information to get back to COI is by resurfacing the Iron Lung. So any conversation between the COI and the last convict on board the sub had to happen in person. So perhaps he didn't manage to escape after their last voyage. Or, like, maybe he was executed like he mentioned in the note? But again, the note says that he will take his last breath at the bottom of the ocean. So he escaped while under the surface? It's very confusing and it's not quite lining up, right? And something else I can't quite shake is the fact that this previous prisoner pilot resurfaced at least once, perhaps multiple times. But the player can barely make it an hour before this entire submarine falls apart? Listen, man, things are just not adding up here, and while that is bothering me, it's also a hint at what's really going on here. For real, something else that's stuck with me is just how improbable this entire setup is. Not from a science fiction perspective, but from the ramifications of the science fact based on this world. For example, did you ever wonder if an ocean of blood on a moon like this could even exist? Well, the answer is... it's complicated. Now, my first thought was like, would this be too thick to even work as like a liquid ocean? But an actual liquid ocean of blood wouldn't be too thick to work or anything like that. And as it turns out, blood has a very similar density to water at 1,060 kilograms per cubic meter versus water's 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter. There just isn't enough of a difference there that the ship would like break instantly, or that it would be too goopy and thick for anything to swim through it or anything like that. I guess the blood really isn't that much thicker than water. But if we take things a step further, well, it would be very difficult for an ocean of blood like this to exist because of space. Why? Well, several reasons. And the first one of them comes down to where this moon might actually be located. The game calls the moon we're exploring AT5. Very catchy name. And there's no record I could find of a moon or exomoon with that same name. So we're gonna need to use some context clues to figure out where in the vast void of our universe this is taking place. And thankfully, there are ways to narrow it down. Using the terminal on the Iron Lung in the game, we know that this story takes place within our solar system, which already really trims down our options. We also know that the calendar system in the game uses the founding of the very first off-Earth colony as its year 0. And in our current calendar, this would have been the year 1992. Fun fact, but 1992 was actually when NASA launched the Mars Observer, but that mission failed after communication with the craft was lost 3 days before it was meant to orbit Mars. So using that little bit of information, we can deduce that this is a universe where the Observer succeeded and led to the founding of a colony on Mars. Anyway, now that we know that this moon is in our solar system, we can try to narrow things down even more. But we're quickly gonna run into major problem number 2. See, a blood ocean like this couldn't really exist in our IRL solar system. Why? Well, it comes down to the fact that basically every moon in our solar system has no atmosphere, or at the very least, a very thin one. Why would that matter, beyond making it impossible to breathe on them? Well, it has to do with how liquids, like blood, would then react. See, without an atmosphere, the surfaces of these moons would basically be vacuums. There's no air or atmospheric pressure on the surface. The lower your atmospheric pressure, the lower the boiling point of liquids is going to be. And in a vacuum where there's zero pressure, liquids, including blood, would boil instantly. So a moon like this, with an ocean of liquid blood, is going to have a hard time existing anywhere on a moon in our solar system. Well, except for one place. See, while most moons don't really have atmospheres, one of them does. In fact, its atmosphere is even thicker than Earth's. And that would be on Jupiter's moon Titan, which has an atmospheric pressure 1.5 times greater than Earth's. If anything, that would actually increase the boiling point of water, letting it exist as a liquid at a greater range of temperatures. Now, that's cool, and the moon in Iron Lung is likely meant to be Titan, but there is still one problem. This liquid ocean of blood isn't gonna be on Titan either. See, the surface temperature of Titan is about negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit, or about negative 179 degrees Celsius, and that's with our sun still in the solar system pumping energy onto it. In the universe of Iron Lung, where all of the stars disappeared, it would quickly become incredibly cold everywhere. Blood can freeze solid at just negative 4 or negative 20 degrees Celsius, so us or Markiplier aren't going to be able to get into a liquid ocean of it. It would basically be like jumping onto a planet made of extremely cold concrete. So, okay, that's a lot of information that just seems off about the world of Iron Lung from both the game's lore and the real-world science behind this idea. But come on, we are Film Theory. Is there anything we can find by analyzing the trailers for this movie? Well, we're only given a couple minutes of footage total, but yeah, there is a lot here if you know what to look for. Like, Mark's really out here giving us theorists what we need, man. So, first thing I noticed here, well, in the trailer, we're told that the submarine will reach cruising depth in
Roughly 2 minutes.
2 minutes. That's significantly longer than the game's 40 seconds, which could mean one of a few things. Either the submarine technology got significantly better, doubtful since we've concluded that this is the same sub as the game, that they're taking things way slower in the movie, or that the blood ocean in the film is a lot deeper than the one in the game. That may or may not be significant, but it was something I noticed and wanted to point out. Second, and more importantly, well, we hear this interaction in the trailer.
You did test this thing, right?
This is the test.
This right here is telling us that Mark's character is either the first to really use the sub, or was one of the firsts. And, isn't it interesting that we know for a fact that someone used the sub right before the player in the game? And stepping back a second to the note that we find in the sub in the game, its words do sound familiar if you go and rewatch the teaser.
They will get their execution. We will get my freedom.
Yeah, parts of the note are in the trailer for the movie, verbatim, with Mark's character saying them. Mark's character here is that previous convict. See, I bet that throughout the plot of this first movie, we're gonna find that Mark is playing a convict from Eden sent to his potential death. He's gonna become aware of what COI is doing, and that they don't really care if he lives or dies. And by the end of the movie, he'll scrawl this note and leave it for the next person trapped in the Iron Lung. And somehow, by the end of the film, he'll escape, finding release from this prison of an existence within the blood ocean and the monsters hiding under it. But while this will offer absolution and escape for Mark's character, well, the cycle will start anew, with the prisoner thrown into the Iron Lung to continue exploring the depths. Another soul forced into this machine again.
Yeah, she gave me a good idea.
And
So you
over.
know that
Yes,
mountain,
this will be the
right?
player character
Yeah.
from the game, but even from another
I
meta
can
level,
use
it's
that
each of the streamers and
and put it,
YouTubers
like,
and
on the,
players
like, extension
playing
cord
the
thingy,
game again
on
and
the little
again,
part that's
over
supposed to,
and
like,
over. And
stick to the
that's
wall.
because whatever is happening here in this game, it's symbolic of purgatory, of being both alive and dead, of being tested and forced to do the impossible over and over again with no real reward. And sure, that makes sense on the surface with how things aren't really making sense scientifically and with how cruel COI is. But if you actually look into the symbolism behind everything in Iron Lung, it becomes even more clear. See, blood is an interesting choice for these oceans, right? I mean, it really does fit with the horror aesthetic and adds a lot of mystery to this sci-fi world. And let's be real, the phrase blood
Maybe
ocean
I
is
should
just
make a
legit
song
really rad,
on
not
the
gonna
song.
lie. But symbolically, blood has an
Maybe I
important
should
role
make
in
a
several
song later
religions
on
and
soon.
cultures throughout history. The blood of Christ is an important symbol in multiple sects of Christianity, and several
do you
other
think
ancient
I'd
cultures shed
accept
blood
if
in
I make
rituals
one
that symbolized giving their
just
life to
based
appease
off of
deities. In
my
fact, the
blood?
term bloodshed literally means death, to take someone's life. The entire premise of Iron Lung has its characters wading into an ocean of blood, as clear a symbol of death that you can come up with while still living. This is symbolizing a limbo
It's
stage
because I
between
love
life
you.
and death. And I mean, this isn't really the only religious symbol here, right? The quiet rapture and the disappearance of most life in the universe is a direct reference to the rapture from Christianity, where true believers ascend into heaven to be with God. And I mean, come on, the main character is literally from a colony
And good
called
morning,
Eden,
Ray.
as in the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve were said to have been created by God, and from where they were banished by God. As a member of the Eden colony, the main character here has also been banished and cursed, forced out of paradise and into literal purgatory after the quiet
That will be
rapture.
amazing
And the
if
final
you
piece of this
finally
puzzle, the
get
thing that
those
tells
things
us
out.
what's really going on here in this story, well, it comes down to the name of this game and to this movie,
Hopefully
Iron
you did get
Lung.
those
So,
posters
back
on
before the 1950s, there was a terrible disease known
And
as
hopefully
polio. This
you
was a
will
truly
ask your
awful
friend to
scourge
get
on
your
this
CD
planet,
player
which could often
instead
lead
of
to
a
weakened
Christmas
muscles or even paralysis. And worst of all, one of the muscles polio
Who
could
is
paralyze was the diaphragm. This is the muscle that helps your lungs inhale and exhale. It helps you breathe. Thankfully, these days, modern medicines and vaccines have more or less
you want the
eliminated
pumpkin,
polio.
I
But
get it.
before that vaccine was developed, getting polio could often be fatal, or at the very least lead
Nice,
to
okay, I
lifelong,
think
life-ruining
Pocket
side effects.
or
And
somewhere
doctors
has
did everything they
pumpkins
could to help
still.
those with the most severe polio symptoms survive, including creating a machine that could help you breathe. What they ended up with was basically a
you
large
wanted
horizontal metal tube that
a
could assist
CD
the
player
breathing
that
of people who
looks
couldn't
like a
do it
Christmas
themselves.
tree, darling.
It was a complicated piece of equipment, but it basically became an
Amazing.
artificial
That will be
diaphragm,
amazing
which is how
too.
it was given the name Iron Lung. Yeah, this name wasn't chosen for the game and the movie randomly because it sounded metal and cool and awesome. It was
Oh, I
inspired
get
very
it now.
much
One
by
in
this
phone.
real-world device. Now, for the most part, the Iron Lung was intended to be a temporary fix. People would stay in there until they recovered enough
You
to
don't
breathe
want
on their own
another one?
again. But sadly, this wasn't the case for everyone. Some people stayed in these machines for the rest of their lives,
Well, that
dying
would be
in them
nice
despite
if
the
you
best
guys
efforts
can
of the
meet.
medical professionals helping them. Some even lived for years and years, decades and
I was
decades.
thinking
Like
about
Paul
not
Alexander,
letting
who
you guys
contracted
meet.
polio at the age of 6 and lived in an iron lung until he finally passed away in March of 2024. And while this machine was
You
incredible
leave
and it
that
helped
man to
people
talk
survive,
about you.
well, I don't think anyone would argue that it was a pleasant experience. You were basically trapped in this metal tube
You
with
really
only
want
your head
Ian
left
and to meet?
uncovered. And that's very similar to what we're seeing here in Iron
Yeah,
Lung,
I know, I'm
right?
not gonna
Trapped
be
in this
fun
metal
talk
tube
about
with
this.
barely any contact with the outside
But I'm
world.
gonna leave
In and
you
of
and
itself,
talk about
it's not a
Edna.
death sentence, but it isn't a cure or a savior either. For so many people forced into an iron lung,
You
survival
don't
was
want
only
to do that
possible
either.
inside of the machine, and leaving it
Why?
was certain death. It was a cruel choice, a terrible fate, and one that many might want to find an escape from, just like we see in the Iron Lung story. In the note left behind by the previous conflict, it
Okay,
says,
I will
There is
let
still
you guys
hope.
meet
It lies
probably
beyond the veil.
next
Beyond the Veil. Sounds ominous, right? And on top of that, Beyond
Or
the
if
Veil
I
is the
decide
achievement
to
players
do it
unlock by
after
finishing the game's story.
that
After
game.
you take all of the pictures and the monster breaks through the Iron Lung and ends
After
your
me
life.
and
If
Edna's
being killed is
specimen.
what brings you beyond the veil, so to speak, then the hope of escape here is death.
They will get their execution.
What would you do if
Man, it's
me
really
and
dark,
after
but for this
we-
character, for the
after
protagonist
we
of
told
Iron Lung,
Edna,
both
what
the
would you
movie
do?
and the game,
If
the
me
only
and
escape they have here is
What
the
would you
embrace
do
of death,
after we
just like
told
so many
Edna?
trapped
What
in
would
those
you do
real-world
if me
Iron
and Edna
Lungs.
both
But
came
with
to
that
you
escape,
and
they're
threw you out
finally
the
able to
window and
leave
said, "Bounce
purgatory,
house
to
with
escape the
king
limbo
live."
between life and death.
Hey, I
It's a
don't
very
mind.
dark,
As long
complicated
as I
message,
don't land
but
on
one
the
that is
kangaroo,
also
we're good.
incredibly powerful if you look
Now
at it
you're
from the
gonna
right
land
direction.
on
But
cinder
hey,
block.
that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory, the end of the world is here with the moon woke up.
Nah.
I love you. I will be right back.
Okay.
Okay everyone, this will be the end of the reaction. If you like the reaction, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell us what you want us to react to next. Make sure to hit the bell icon so you get notified whenever we upload Preston Good Without further ado, and we are out.